Okay, so they said um, people are fed up with racism. So black Americans are headed overseas. And they said, I'm leaving, I'm not coming back. Okay. So they said, I'm looking at this article here. This guy, his name is Anthony Baguette. He knew the precise moment he had to get out. He was driving by a convenience store in Cincinnati when a police officer pulled him over. There had been a robbery. He fit the description given by the store clerk, a black man. Okay, so they said he knew he was arrested in Chicago. Okay, this is a different guy. And accused by police of concealing a loaded gun under a seat in his car. This name is very hard to pronounce. His name is like an African name, it looks like. He did have a gun, but it was not loaded. He used it in his role teaching at an outdoor skills camp for inner city kids. So they said that he had a license and the gun was kept safely in the car's trunk. But I guess he still got in trouble. Okay, the next person her name is Tiffany Drayton. She knew she kept her family kept getting priced out of gentrification neighborhoods in New Jersey. She said they were destined to be forever displaced in the U.S. And then Trayvon Martin was shot and killed after buying a bag of Skittles and can of iced tea. Okay. Let's see. All three are part of a small cultural cohort. Black, I don't know what they mean there. Okay, so they're just saying these black people are powerless in the face of persistent racism, police brutality, and economic struggles in the U.S., and chose to settle and pursue their American-born dreams abroad. That's what these people chose. No official statistics cover these international transplants. In Ghana, where... Okay, so we're not going to get into that. So let's see. Okay, so she moves. Okay, so it looks like this last lady we just talked about, she now moved to Trinidad and Tobago, where she works in her home office, which has a view of the ocean and hummingbirds frolicking above the pool, where there are at least 4. Her mother, sister, and her sister's boyfriend, they are probably will move to about 120,000 Americans live in Germany, home to about 1 million people of African descent. Okay. Germany's census does not use race as a category, as it is not possible to calculate how many haul from the USA. Okay, so there's a lot of institutional racism in Germany. So they said she has lived in Berlin for more than 30 years and said he feels conflicted about his move. He described the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 as a time when Nazi and skinheads would throw black people off the S-Bahn, the city's subway system. But I still feel better off here, safer, he said. So this person said, I don't have to think of myself as a black woman. In interviews with more than a dozen black Americans spread out across the globe from the Caribbean to West Africa, it became clear that for some, the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis provided fresh evidence that living outside the U.S. can be an exercise in self-preservation. A study in 2019 by the National Academy of Sciences found black men were about 2.5 times more likely than white men to be killed by the police. An analysis this year by Nature Human Behavior of 100 million traffic stops conducted across the country determined Black people were more likely to be pulled over by police than whites, but that difference narrowed significantly at night when it is harder to see dark skin. Black Americans face a far higher risk of being arrested for petty crimes. They account for a third of the prison population, but just 13% of the overall population, according to Pew Research, a nonpartisan fact tank. So let's read that again so you guys can understand this part. So they said, okay, so an analysis this year by Nature Human Behavior of 100 million traffic stops conducted across the country determined that black people were far more likely to be pulled over by police than whites, and that the difference narrowed significantly at night when it is harder to see dark skin. Black Americans face a higher risk of being arrested for petty crimes. They account for a third of the prison population, but just 13% of the overall population. Okay? Okay. So they said that Drayton is writing a book about fleeing from racism in America. She said one of the starkest illustrations of how her life has changed since moving to Trinidad and Tobago in 2013 is how she feels comfortable driving her kids around the block to get them to sleep each night without being worried about what happens if she's pulled over by police. In America, your hands are shaking. You're worried about what to say. You're worried about whether you have the right ID. You're just so worried all the time. She said of the interactions her friends experience regularly with American police officers. For other black Americans who chose what amounts to a form of foreign exile, Floyd's death and the ensuing protests confirmed that leaving may not mean a life free from racism and police brutality, but at least feels somewhat more within reach. Okay? It wasn't until I left the U.S. to experience Spain that I really got a sense of what freedom looks like. I was able to be 100% myself without having to worry about safety and without needing to have too much of a complexity identity, she said, who lives near Valencia on the Mediterranean Sea. Brown founded a company that helps black American women immigrate to Spain. She said Spain isn't racism free and it isn't that diverse, but she has experienced it as a welcoming place where people are willing to be educated about their prejudice. And then after that, she said here, whoops, hold on a second. Okay, so let's see what else they're saying. So she said here, I don't have to think of myself as a black woman and everything that comes with that. So she's 32 and she grew up in New Jersey and runs her own communications firm in Ghana's capital. She said, here, I'm just a woman. She said that although racism in the U.S. contributed to her decision to move to Ghana, was not a direct reaction to prejudice. She was equally intrigued by culture and what she saw as a growing economic success story, rarely portrayed in the West, where Africa, for many, is synonymous with disease, poverty, and conflict. When I got here, I remember thinking, there's wealthy black people here. No one tells you that. I was really pissed about it. I also really intrigued, she said. Come home, build a life in Ghana. You do not have to stay. Africa is waiting for you. Okay, so she said that since Floyd's death in May, This lady said she has received several emails a day from Black Americans asking how to and can they make a new life outside the U.S. Then she said, come home, build a life in Ghana. You do not have to stay where you are not wanted forever. You have a choice, and Africa is waiting for you. Okay, so in Russia, they said they felt like a full-time human being. Okay. So they said Black Americans, like of all races and ethnicities, leave the USA temporarily or permanently for different reasons in search of a better quality of life and to find work opportunities, marry, and retire abroad for taxation reasons and adventure. This year, Essence, a Black fashion, entertainment, and lifestyle magazine, published a list of Black travel influencers who trek to faraway and sexy places from the pyramids of Giza to the souks of Dubai while we sit at our desks watching. Okay. And then she said, Black people have always traveled and we've gone places willingly or unwillingly. Often this travel is connected in some way to a search for an experience that is not tainted by the myriad ways of Black Americans encountering discrimination in the U.S. In America, I feel hyper visible in ways I didn't when I lived in the U.S., said Springer, noting that although racial inequalities in the U.S., like in the U.S., are deep and pervasive, they are connected to a history and tradition. In the UK case, it's former empire that she doesn't share as a foreigner, despite being a Black American foreigner. She said she was afforded a certain amount of insulation from British racism, even though studies show the British justice system disproportionately penalizes Black people. Okay. I'm skimming through this. In Britain, I don't generally walk around thinking I might get killed, whereas in America, in some places, that's not always the case, he said. Okay. Asked about whether Black people should confront racism at home rather than leave, he said, why shouldn't they just live? If a white person leaves America and goes somewhere for work or better opportunities, no one would say to them they need to stay and fight for racial equality. Black people have a double burden of being discriminated against and having to stick around. Black Americans have been trying to escape American racism from segregation for generations. There are examples among America's Black intellectuals, artists, and prominent civil rights activists. Okay. Okay. Let me see. I'm seeing if there's anything else that we should talk about. Okay. 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 Some of this stuff they write is just not that important. Okay. It's like having a few more stepping stones to achieve that. Let's see what she's saying. Oh, he said that after the police in Chicago falsely accused him of concealing a loaded gun, this is that other guy. The charges were thrown out by a judge because there was no probable cause for his arrest and the evidence obtained illegally would not be advisable in court. And so the guy said, I will never allow myself again to be in that jurisdiction of these white people who on a whim can decide you're not going to see your family for the next 10 years. Well, again, your parents gotta warn you when you're young. Like, if people don't tell you what you could potentially go through or face, then you're not gonna know. Who can decide to throw a felony charge on you on a whim? Okay. So, said she tells her friends to leave if they can. Many desperately want to, she said, but either don't have the financial means or face other obstacles. Next person said, I've been wanting to leave for a long time. Um, she was born in Ecuador. She lives in Orlando, Florida, but it's difficult as young divorced mother of a child with special needs to just get up and leave. So they said she is determined to make a life in Southern Europe, not least because she wants to own a house and build and pass on wealth. She has a 16-year-old daughter in the U.S. and said accumulating general wealth is something that has proved elusive for Black Americans, unlike whites. Okay, so let's see what else they say. Her experience is that it will be easier to do this in Spain than in New York, where there are more barriers to financial success, from discrimination in mortgage lending, redlining, to access to social welfare services such as affordable daycare. It's like having a few more stepping stones to achieve that. So then estimated the overall average wealth of white American families is at least 10 times larger than of Black American families. Okay? Okay, I'm skimming through this. Okay. Okay, so this person said they learned to live with mixed feelings about their adopted homeland. He values the free education, the health care his kids receive in Germany. He does not routinely fear for their lives now that he made the move. Okay. Okay, let's see what else they said. Okay, so this is what impressed them the most about Germany's capital was the easy access to fresh fruit, especially strawberries. It was available on most streets and small kiosks. Okay, let's see what else they have to say. Okay, so these people, a lot of them, they're leaving Chicago and they're going overseas so they can feel a sense of freedom and not be worried about their constant safety. So anyway, that is the end of the article. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like the video for me. Please subscribe. And if you are one of those Americans who are fed up with racism and you are going overseas now because you had enough and you just don't want to be here anymore, go ahead and comment below. Let us know what's going on in your life and why you're leaving.